The cadets had never seen a predator cub so fearless. Not on this station. Not in any training facility across the Orion sector. And certainly not growling, yes. Growling at a human. Lieutenant Mara Chen, human liaison officer, leaned casually against the observation rail of the cadet training arena, her arms crossed over her chest. The predator cub, a small but ferocious-looking alien creature, orange and black with sharp little claws and glinting eyes, was crouched in a hunting stance, tail flicking, ears pointed forward, ready to pounce. Around the arena, cadets from a dozen species froze mid-step, their training manuals slipping from their grasp. Some had claws. Some had exoskeletons. Some had telepathic abilities that would have allowed them to sense danger long before it appeared. And yet all of them hesitated. Mara raised an eyebrow. "You've never seen this before?" she asked the cadets, voice light, almost teasing. We've trained with predators, Lieutenant," one trembling cadet stammered. "But this is cute," Mara finished for them, glancing down at the cub, who let out another playful growl. The sound was low, vibrating, sharp enough to make the cadets flinch, or terrifying, depending on your perspective. The cub bounded forward, claws extended in mock aggression, ears back, teeth bared. The cadets instinctively jumped back. Mara sighed. "Relax," she said, crouching to meet the cub at eye level. Her brown eyes were steady, her posture calm. "It's just playtime. You're safe." Then she did something the cadets never expected. She growled back. It wasn't a human mimic of a sound. It was a full-throated, low, vibrating growl that carried a weight of authority the cub could recognize. The creature froze mid-pounce, ears twitching, eyes wide. Then it tilted its head. Mara laughed, soft and musical, and the cub chirped in response, a sound like a tiny explosion of joy. The cadets blinked, utterly speechless. "You see?" Mara said, standing and extending a hand toward the cub. "Humans can play the game." 2. The cub leapt into her arms, purring, a deep, mechanical-sounding vibration, and the cadets let out nervous breaths they hadn't realized they'd been holding. 2 hours earlier, the arena had been quiet, save for the hum of life support systems and the occasional squeak of sneakers on the polished training floor. Mara had arrived with the cub tucked safely in her jacket, its claws retracted, ears relaxed. "Lieutenant Chen," Commander Vorsk's voice had echoed in her earpiece. "Remember, this is a controlled exercise. Cadets are to familiarize themselves with alien species. Your responsibility is keep the cub safe," Mara had smiled. "Understood, Commander." She glanced at the cadets all assembled at attention. They represented a dozen species, each with unique physiology, each with instincts tuned for survival in hostile environments. And yet, none of their instincts had prepared them for this. The cub wriggled in her jacket, letting out a soft chirrup. Mara whispered to it, her voice low and soothing, and it relaxed. She could feel its tiny heartbeat, rapid but steady. She knew its species, its history, and its behavioral patterns better than any textbook could describe. "Cadets," she said, "this cub is playful, but it's also a predator. Watch and learn and don't panic." The cadets nodded, though their eyes were wide. Some shifted nervously from foot to foot. Mara could read them like an open data pad. One of them was telepathic, trying to suppress a wave of fear. Another had wings slightly furled, signaling readiness to flee. "Step 1, Mara continued, observe. Step 2, respond calmly. Step 3, engage if necessary." She removed the cub from her jacket and set it on the arena floor. Immediately it crouched, tail twitching, eyes locked on her. It growled softly. The cadets flinched. Mara smiled. "Step 4, she whispered, leaning toward the cub. And then she growled. The effect was immediate. The cub froze, confused, then tilted its head. Mara laughed. "Good, see? We communicate." She tapped her chest. "Humans communicate differently than you expect. We can match playfulness with authority." The cadets watched as the next 15 minutes unfolded like a masterclass in interspecies training. The cub leapt. Mara ducked and twirled, her movements precise, balanced, entirely in rhythm with the creature's own instincts. She growled, laughed, whispered commands, and even allowed the cub to latch onto her sleeve in mock attack. Each time, the cadets stiffened and then relaxed a little, realizing the human was not afraid. "That's impossible," one cadet muttered, his wings fluttering nervously. "Impossible only means you haven't seen it yet," Mara said, sweeping across the arena, the cub following her lead. Predators respect confidence. Fear? They exploit it. Humor? They tolerate it if it makes sense. And humans, she added, spinning and narrowly avoiding a playful swipe of claws. "We adapt." The cub jumped at her, teeth clicking harmlessly against her glove. She laughed and growled back again, the sound deep and resonant. The cadets blinked, some instinctively reaching for weapons or containment nets. Mara shook her head. "Stop, observation first. Violence only if necessary. This is play." And yet, even in play, the cub's eyes gleamed with feral intelligence. It tested her, nudged her, leapt, pounced, and growled. Mara responded each time: growl, laugh, dodge, command, smile. By the end of the session, the cadets realized something extraordinary. This human was not just surviving the cub's play, she was thriving. By the end of the hour, the cadets had learned more than any manual could teach them. They had learned humans are unpredictable. Where instincts could fail, creativity and courage filled the gaps. Adaptability is a weapon. Even the most ferocious predator could be met with confidence, understanding, and a little playfulness. Leadership isn't about fear. It's about presence, control, and empathy, even in situations others might find terrifying. Mara knelt and scooped the cub into her arms, holding it against her chest. It purred, vibrating through her ribs. The cadets stood frozen, awestruck, and for the first time in their lives, they realized humans were more than fragile or predictable. They were extraordinary. Commander Vorsk, observing from the balcony, finally spoke. His voice echoed across the arena, amplified by the PA system. "Lieutenant Chen, your performance is exemplary. Cadets, take note. Humans are not just part of the alliance. They are a standard by which we measure ingenuity, courage, and adaptability." Mara smiled faintly, placing the cub back on the floor. It padded around her feet, tail high, before darting toward the cadets in a playful mock charge. The cadets stiffened again. Mara growled, softly this time, and laughed. The cub skidded to a halt, confused, and then returned to her side. "You see?" she said, arms crossed again. "We humans, we can play the game, and sometimes the game plays back." One cadet finally found his voice. "Lieutenant, how do you do that?" Mara's eyes twinkled. "Do what?" "Command the predator, with just a growl and laughter. With no fear," she shrugged. "Instinct, observation, humor, confidence, and maybe a little luck. But mostly, we adapt. That's what makes humans special." The cadets nodded, a mix of admiration and awe. One wrote in his datapad, "Human Lieutenant Chen, biological anomaly, standard bearer for interspecies adaptability." The cub yawned, tiny claws stretching, and curled against Mara's leg. The cadets finally relaxed, realizing the lesson had ended. Yet the impression lingered. They would not forget it. Later, in the quiet of her quarters, Mara reflected on the day. The cub curled in her lap, purring, eyes half closed. She traced her fingers through its fur. The universe was vast, often indifferent, and sometimes dangerous. But moments like this reminded her why humans survived, thrived, and occasionally astonished every alien they met. A growl, low and pleased, rumbled in her lap. Mara laughed softly. "Yeah," she said, scratching behind its ears. "We're pretty amazing, aren't we?" The cub chirped in agreement, tail flicking. Mara leaned back, letting herself relax, letting the station hum around her. In a universe built on rules, hierarchies, and instinct, humans were a wild card, playful, fierce, adaptable, and when necessary, unafraid to growl back at the predators of the galaxy, whether cub-sized or not. And for Mara Chen,